Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
Continuing with part 2 today, and we have 3 very, very wonderful guests to do that. Our guests have been going for several years to South America to bring medical services, and this one that we're talking about is this trip they took in January to Guatemala, and a lot of it has to do with eye care and eye surgery, and I welcome to the program again 3 wonderful people. First of all is Dr. Madge Storm Gibson, who practices here in Coeur d'Alene. She'll talk about her area of practice is somewhat different than her spouse's, which is Dr. Justin Storm Gibson. And our third guest today is Mary Sobolski, who is a nurse and is part of this wonderful team. And ladies and gentlemen, I just am very interested in sharing with you, along with our panel, the work that they're doing. And we have slides for you today, so if you feel like you've been on the trip also. And Janelle Burke, we welcome you back as always, and you will start today's questioning.
Thank you, Tony. Again, welcome to you. It was a very enjoyable program last week. It's an honor to have you here, and you're an inspiration to those of us who feel like we should be doing something for other folks. And you're doing it through an organization and through this trip that you took to Guatemala. So let's start with Dr. Justin today, and if you will tell what your role was and also sort of who sponsored this, and then if Madge, Dr. Madge, you could fill in and say what you did, and then Mary, would you, as the nurse who was organizing, kind of say how many people went and what kinds of things you did?
Sure.
So let's start with
Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting us to come and speak about this. It's just great. We love this kind of work, and we've been doing it now for 16 years. This particular trip, and for the last few years we've been working with an organization called Hospital de la Familia, which means Hospital of the Family, and it's a group out of San Francisco that sponsors this work in Guatemala. And it's a hospital that's been functioning for about 30 years now in the mountains of western Guatemala near the Mexican border, and we go there on a regular basis and do mostly eye surgery work, both adults and pediatric eye care.
And Dr. Madge, what was your role and how did you get there?
Okay. I am a pediatrician, so I have the privilege of looking at the children that Justin has checked out in the clinic ahead of time and said this child could benefit from surgery. So I will do a head-to-toe exam, making sure they're medically ready for surgery, and most children fortunately are. And then I also help in the post-operative when they leave the OR, because we have a wonderful nurse, Denise, who helps there. Her Spanish is limited, so I can go and speak to the parents and explain how the surgery went and just be a resource.
Right. And actually my function is as the sort of team coordinator. I pull together the supplies and make sure we have the right staff for the number of surgeons and doctors going down to work with.
And how many did you have this time?
We were at 29 this last trip.
29, and that includes, it's going to include some nurses, and it's going to include some people who are intake kinds of individuals. It's going to include the surgical staff.
Right.
Probably include some anesthesiologists.
Right.
You fill me in on the rest.
Yes. We had an anesthesiologist and a resident that comes from Stanford that gets the privilege of practicing with the anesthesia guy that's down there. And we had 2 optometrists, one from the Coeur d'Alene area, one from out of the state, and just several volunteers that we've gathered from the area that want to work but may not necessarily have a huge medical background.
And the ophthalmologists in our group are also, a couple of them were my partners, Dr. Steve Moss and Dr. Pat Pardon. And then we have ophthalmologists who have come on different trips from different parts of the country. One from Louisiana, we had one from Yale, who was a glaucoma specialist that came with us on the trip before. One from Bascom Palmer in Florida. And so we kind of draw a team together from around the country.
What fun.
Yeah.
And how very rewarding.
Very much.
These are very humane people. It's very obvious from that. As I've said to our viewers before we got to the direct questions, that we want to take them on your trip. And thank you, and I know, Mary, you put this together, the slideshow, and we're going to break it up, though, between different ones. And if they'll put up the first slide, Madge, you're going to do the first 5, I believe.
Correct, yes.
We'll see what you saw there.
Great. Well, this first slide shows patients waiting in the courtyard of the clinic, and many of these patients have been seen by their primary care Guatemalan doctors and referred for surgery. And the system does have charts, patient charts, that are looked at when the patients come for the initial interview, and we double check that which eye is the most problem, was it trauma, how long has the eye problem been there, and then they get moved on into the clinic where the optometrist usually screens them before the surgeon does.
So it's a lot of process.
It's
thorough.
Thorough process, well documented with paperwork, unlike just,
That's
a
like
team flying in and flying out, not leaving the records.
And here's one of your
patients. This is a
right?
very fun Guatemalan boy who came to have eye surgery done. As you can see, he has marked, must be his left eye.
Yeah, he has a cataract.
I'm making sure it's like a surgery removing an arm or something. We'll make sure you get the right one.
Right, and this is a cataract in a child, which
That's unusual.
It's unusual in the States, and often they are picked up as infants, and the surgery is done early on. Now this cataract, I can't remember if he had it later.
He developed it a little bit later in his life. It really got dense in the last year, which is unusual in the United States, but in Guatemala we see it more frequently.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We'll go to the next slide.
The next slide shows inside the clinic where patients have been chosen to have cataract surgery done, and they're being pre-screened and fitted for lenses. This is an A scan that will tell the surgeon what type of lens, the exact measurement to pick for surgery for that patient. So that's that's a tech from the clinic here, and Dr. Pardon's daughter helping.
Oh, all the family.
Yes.
The next slide.
This is looking over paperwork. That's Dr. Steve Moss
That's
checking.
our friend Dr. Moss.
Checking what needs to happen for that patient.
I have to say something about Dr. Moss. He's a very gentle man.
Yes,
He's a
he
kind person.
Very kind. Very
Good surgeon.
Yes.
And moving on to the next picture shows at the intake table, this child, adolescent probably, definitely has crossed eyes and other issues going on. Eventually evaluated in the clinic. And then slide number 5, moving on, shows drops being placed in patients' eyes either prior to the surgery or prior to being fully evaluated in the clinic. You need to dilate the eye to get a good exam, and prior to surgery. So it's quite a process getting exact number of drops, eye drops in, and the right timing prior to surgery.
Sure. And Justin, I think you're picking up at this point.
Yeah. Most of the surgery we do in Guatemala is cataract surgery. Of the 160 surgeries we did on this last trip, 115 were cataracts. And so we have a team of 4 surgeons on this particular trip, and this is just a view of patient prepped and ready for the surgery.
And Justin, how about long does it take to do one of those surgeries?
Well, the type of technique that we use in Guatemala is very different than the surgery we
Okay.
use here, because we have much different level of technical ability in the United States. So
Right.
we're doing what we call standard large incision extracapsular cataract surgery. And so you do a lot of sewing with these. So they probably take half an hour to do a typical case, depending on
That's
the
still
surgeon.
that's
Yeah.
still really remarkable. Okay, the next slide.
Well, this is just something that we don't see in the States, and that is an actual cataract after it's been removed. In the States, we use a small incision where we break the cataract up into little pieces and vacuum it out of the eye.
Oh, I see.
In
Very
Guatemala,
different. Yeah.
right, we have to open the eye wider, and these are very dense cataracts.
That's rather large, isn't it?
They're
Large.
large, yeah.
Large and dark.
Almost like birthing a baby
yes.
out of
You
the
can see
eye.
looking at it why they can't see very well.
Yeah.
Here's a large group of people.
This is post-op day number 1 on patients after they've had cataract
They're
surgery.
all wearing sunglasses.
That's
Right.
right. We take down post-operative kits with us that we distribute to the patients. That includes their glasses, also includes antibiotics and steroidal drops, And they're just sitting, waiting after they've been examined, ready to get their instructions, and I give them their post-operative instructions as a group.
That's such a powerful
And,
slide, though. It shows
yeah.
how many people are being helped.
Uh-huh.
And the next one does also, the next slide.
And this is the same group, and I'm giving them their post-op instructions. So I'm talking to them about, you know, which drop to use and how many times to use it, and I have the whole group repeat back to me just so that we're sure that everybody understands exactly what they need to do.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So-
And Mary, I think you're picking up here.
Right. This is just a great picture of a fellow who was told us he's 93 years old.
He doesn't look it, does he?
He doesn't look it. He is pretty amazing, actually, but took a bus to get to the facility, and that bus was about a 45-minute drive away from the facility, but he didn't have enough money to make it from that bus stop to where we were. So he walked the 45-minute drive, took him the whole day to walk so he could have the surgery, and we were able to get him in and take care of him, which was,
Humane
we were
story.
pretty excited about it. We weren't going to turn that fellow away after he
No.
walked so long and hard to get there. And then the next picture is actually a picture of our anesthesia resident, Dr. Eddie Kim, with one of the young kids. I love the kids in Guatemala. They're amazing. I love kids in the States too, but the kids in Guatemala are pretty brave. They're pretty brave. They come right into the operating room with strangers, and they don't fuss much, and you can see the picture shortly after this one. If you want to go ahead and move ahead, is also just getting this young lady ready for surgery.
If I just move to the next slide.
Move right
please.
on. And she sits there very, very calmly without any sense of panic or anything. And then the next picture will show her getting a little bit of anesthetic gas that's going to help make her sleepy so that they can put the IV in and do all the other things that we need to get her ready while she's asleep. Then in the next shot, you will see the team kind of getting her set and getting all the monitoring equipment on her prior to the surgery. And then our very next picture is what it looks like in the anesthesia room, the room where we're doing OR with anesthesia, and the team that works to take care of these kids and watch everything that's going on.
And Justin picks up again with a number of the people.
Yeah, I have just a series of quick slides here of some of the patients. I mean, this is just a cute, cute girl who comes in. You can see that her left eye is crossed pretty severely. And the next picture just shows post-op day 1, which she's got a swollen eye from the surgery, but you can tell
Things are
that
corrected.
she's straight now.
Yeah.
Eyes
And-
line up. That's great.
Yeah, that's great.
It's
It makes
very
a difference in their
rewarding.
lives.
Yeah, it does.
And then the next slide, another.
And just
patient.
more pictures of patients who are, this is pre-operatively, and again, this is a
But
patient
look how
who's
happy the
prostate,
person is.
yeah.
They know there are
Yeah.
going to be some
Uh-huh.
solutions to their problems.
And
I love the next one too.
again, because most of our patients are adults, they're actually on the other side, and we don't use anesthesia over here. On the pediatric side, we have to use general anesthesia in order to be able to.
That has a very special
Yeah.
toy there with the child.
And Mary always rounds up beanie toys to
Get
take.
a lot of donations.
And here's another one
Yep.
of your patients.
Another patient post-operatively. We have a hospital area where they can stay overnight, so we can see them the next day before they go
Right.
home.
And we have another, that
Yep.
one, yes. At this point, I guess, Mary, you're coming back in to finish the slides for us.
This is actually across the street in the cataract section of the facility, and the grandmother of the little girl there has had cataract surgery, and it just shows very typical Guatemalan. The entire family comes, they sit the entire day waiting for them to be taken care of, etc. And the next picture, number 22, I think, is a little family and one of our staff visiting with them and talking to the family while they're waiting. A picture after that is a post-op picture where one of the gals who worked in the cataract room actually is able to see what kind of improvement in vision the patient has had. And I believe our next picture is Dr. Pat Parton. Pretty typical for these people to be very excited when their patches come off and they
Right.
can actually see out of that eye. There's no stopping the gratitude from them. And
Right.
I think the next few pictures we have shots of some more of our doctors with patients that were very happy.
Is this that gentleman you
That
talked
is
about
the
earlier?
93-year-old fellow Pedro who worked so hard and really, really wanted the surgery. The next picture is actually an amazing little story. This gal was so crippled with arthritis, the family didn't have a wheelchair for her. They carried her from her car in a blanket two people on each end of the blanket,
for
and
her surgery.
that's how they moved her. She
That's
never fussed or complained. and
Dr. Moss with
That's
her.
Dr. Moss with her.
And
He
so
did her
was it
surgery,
cataracts
right?
there too?
Did cataract surgery on her very crippled lady. And then the picture after that is one of our optometrists who goes down, has a great sense of humor, and his patients love him very
Rupert
much.
Challenge.
Rupert is great, yeah. And then the last picture is just a picture that kind of, I think, summed up the feeling of the patients that we see down there. This fellow wanted to let us know that he was very grateful to us for coming down to help him.
Well, I just thank all of you again for, and I know that you had many, many more slides, and we asked you to pick a certain number for our program, and what a great human story through pictures. We've always heard a picture's worth 1,000 words, and certainly I think this indicates that. Janelle Burke.
Well, we heard some great stories as you were going through the slides, but I'd like to ask you each one to also say one of the stories that you brought home from this trip or another trip that has been particularly rewarding and you're reminded of when you want to think about how it is that we can help other people. Let's start with Justin, and we'll go right around with Madge.
Yeah,
and then with
I mean,
Mary.
there's just so many stories, but one that really stands out in my mind. Again, these are people who live in rural areas, often have difficulty. They don't have enough money to pay for transportation, or they're crippled like that woman. There's one young man who carried his father, strapped a wooden chair to his back with the chair so the father was facing back, and carried him about 8 hours on his back to bring him to the clinic in order for him to have cataract surgery, because he had been blind from from cataracts, and he underwent the surgery and could see afterwards. And the son, I just remember watching him walk down the hill with his father on his back, and just happy that he could come and have that kind of surgery and be able to see again. So,
How exciting. I mean,
Yeah.
very, very exciting.
It is
Madge?
very dramatic, because these are people who arrive at the clinic being led in. I mean, they are blind. In the U.S., you get cataract surgery when your vision starts going blurry and things are inconvenient for you. There, people are blind. Often both eyes, dense cataracts. So it's very dramatic, the result. I would say I'm reflecting back to a trip we took to Mexico, southern Mexico, and just to illustrate how inaccessible healthcare is, these families, when we would do little social histories on the families that would come, and families would really have to measure out and determine if they sell this cow, could they then have enough money to get them to the clinic and pay what part of the bill they were responsible for. So it's a huge part of their annual income to have any kind of health care. And so if, medical people from the States can go donate their time to make that cost less, I think it's great.
Before or during the program, we talked about the fact that so many people present in other countries in a much more advanced stage. Would you
yes.
please speak to that just briefly before we go to
Sure.
Mary?
Well, I would say in the past, probably 2 out of 3 of our last trips, we've seen children under the age of 2 years who have presented with a very inflamed eye. Doesn't do it justice, red, twice the size, pus pouring out, and this is not a simple infection. This is a tumor growing in behind the eye and invading the eye, and once a tumor gets to that size, it's probably invaded the brain, and so it's just inoperable. We've had 2 children in the last 2 to 3 years present so advanced that we've basically had to tell the parents this child is going to die. One time they had already been to a hospital in Mexico and heard that story as well, but they wanted a second opinion, and we gave the baby pain medicine and said, take your child home. And that's very hard to do, very hard. You just don't see that advanced pathology in the U.S. Kids don't just go that long without inadequate care.
Thank you. Mary, a story.
If I would think one of the stories that I wasn't directly involved with but heard about at the end of the mission trip was last June, where we had a farmer come in for cataract surgery. And at the end of the surgery, one of the assistants asked, where's your shoes so we can help walk you back out? And he said, I've never owned a pair of shoes. And one of the nurses was actually it was our ophthalmology resident, Allison Chisholm, was so touched by the thing that she ran upstairs and got her pair of Crocs and gave this fellow her rubber Crocs to wear, which were just absolutely adorable because they were hot pink. But that was his very first pair of shoes ever, and just a delightful story and picture to see the smile on his face when he got his shoes.
2 or 3 years ago in this program, we did a group from another church here in Coeur d'Alene, and headed by the pastor and my wonderful friend, the physician, Dr. Mike Dixon, such a great man. And they went to South America, and the story was told there. They were there for other types of medical, treatment and care. And the gentleman walked in, and he didn't have any socks and never owned them. And one of the physicians literally took his shoes off, took his socks, and gave them to the patient. Those stories are just incredibly touching. Mary, I have a question for you, and then I'm going to also promote to our viewers how they could be helpful to your work. I saw in today's program in particular, observing that families are, and Justin really had this incredible story about carrying the father on his back for 8 hours. That's just it's almost unimaginable how difficult that would be. But there seems to be such love and unity within a family, and so much care for a member of the family that is having some real problems. Did you notice that? Is it just some kind of, I guess in times of crisis, people come, even in this country there's a crisis, like 9/11, people for a temporary period of time really united. And so is that part of it because they go through so much? But I just observed that there must be such love in the families.
I think culturally, family is different for them because they don't have the distraction that we have in this country with TV and movies and theater and money to do things.
And they live together. I mean, in this country, a lot of family members move to other parts of the country.
But also very extended families.
Yes.
It would not be unusual to have a young fellow bring in a great-grandmother to be taken care of because that's who they live with and take care of.
And Justin, back to you, because this work costs money. And the organizations you work with out of San Francisco, of course, they raise funds too. But you're beginning to do your own organization, and that's very exciting. Tell us how, I'll give the website here in a minute, or you can, but how can people assist? That obviously everybody can't go to South America, but they can empower you people who do by assisting.
Well, we are always looking for good nurses to come help and people who have good Spanish language skills that can help translate. Short of that, if people want to help financially, I'm happy to promote Hospital de la Familia because I really do believe they are an excellent organization. They've been doing this 30 years and have worked out a lot of the bugs and really have an ongoing thing. And so you could go to their website, which is Hospital de la Familia, or www.hospitaldelafamilia.com. Or we are starting our own institute here, the International Eye Institute. And we will have a website that's available that people can go to.
And by the time we air this program, it's going to be some time. I think we'll. So, the first place they could go to would be www.internationaleyeinstitute, which is all one word.
Right.
.org. So again, www.internationaleyeinstitute.org. Or you have a second one.
Or iGive, as in EYEGIVE.
So www.igive.org, and it's EYEGIVE. I was writing it down the wrong way, the other kind of I, and so I hope people will take advantage of that to be helpful to all of you. I guess every so often in this program I ask this very philosophical question, and in different subject matters in life, and so Madge, I'm going to start with you, and that is from all of this, and we've talked some about on the program, from a philosophical viewpoint. I was talking to a wonderful man that has done a lot of work, and he's not just retired, and he said, I want to do one more great thing for people in my life. He's an attorney here. I hope I can, he said. What advice would you give to our viewers from a philosophical viewpoint? What's life all about? What is our role while we are on this planet?
Oh boy, that is deep. I would say no matter where you are situated, every day is a gift. Every day, how we encounter people, kindness we show, generosity we show. I think most of us, looking back, wish we had been more generous. more giving, and I think we all have a capacity to do that, no matter what your profession is, what your life situation is. And so anyone else have
That
thoughts?
was, I'm going to go this, but that was a deep answer. So
Yeah.
That's very wonderful. Justin?
Well, I think to whom much has been given, much is expected. And we have a responsibility, I believe, to share the talents and the gifts that we've been given with others who are less fortunate.
Well, you're all an illustration of that. Mary, your turn.
I would just like to say that I think that we're fortunate because we can take the skills that we are good at and give to somebody what we would want to have if we needed it. I would not want to go through life blind or less able to see, and if I can help somebody not have to suffer from that, then I think it behooves me to do that.
We're almost out of time, but one other final question, that is, and Justin, I'll come back to you. We know about the Peace Corps and other things. You know, John Kennedy started the Peace Corps. What you're doing and other groups like you around the world, doesn't that do wonderful things for America and how people look at us?
It does, and I think even more, my contention is that these trips that we do, although I think we do a lot of good work when we're there, even more important is what we bring back with us. I see the reverse mission of these projects as even more important because it helps. I love to take groups down. I love to see people who've never been outside the United States to go and see what it's really like, what 2/3 of the world live like, what it's like to live in a developing country, and they come back with a whole different understanding about who we are in the global community. And I think that is one of the most important things that we take from these trips.
And it gives us a broader perspective. We're not so parochial in our outlook.
Absolutely.
Locally, we're looking at it more globally and how we're seeing.
Plus, I would say it is a global community. Any time in life you have the privilege to travel or work or stay overseas, I believe there would be less war. If people got to know people from Asia, Latin America, Africa, that we would be less ready to engage in armed conflict.
The people-to-people program.
Really, exactly.
That is. What a wonderful note on which to end the program. Thank all of three of you. We've had Dr. Justin Storm Gibson, Dr. Madge Storm Gibson, and Mary Cebulski, who is a nurse. And again, thank you for what you've done, and congratulations for what you've done, and good luck in the future. And ladies and gentlemen, we've immensely enjoyed bringing you this 2-week series with our guests and how they have served humanity in their trips to South America, helping those less fortunate than us. And of course, they also practice here. I know of your work here, and so again, thank you very much.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be with us again next week at the same time, and we'll move to yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.